So if you've come here today, you're probably looking to know how to play the Sorcery, the Contested Realm collectible card game. Phil and I are going to take you through the steps of how to play the game and give you what I think will be a very simple guide that you can use as a reference to play the game as you're learning to play.
So Zach and I here are going to just walk through the rule book and then actually play out the things the rule book are saying, so you can follow along and get an introductory guide to how to play sorcery.
All right, so first thing you need to know about Sorcery is your avatar. Your avatar represents you on the realm. The realm is the board that you're playing on. Now you'll see that this board has 20 spaces. It is 4 up and down, 5 across. So your avatar is basically your life total and your spellcaster in the realm. So when you start the game, you'll notice that each avatar has a life total and has a power. The life total is how much life you start out with. Almost every avatar, in fact, I think at this point, every avatar starts at 20 life, and most avatars start at 1, but there are a couple 2s and 3s, but for the most part, each avatar has 1 power.
Know that right now, all the avatars that exist at the time that you're watching this video all have 20 life, but given that avatars can change their power, it opens up in the future that there may be an avatar that might start with a different life total.
So the bottom part is a text box. This is the rules box for what your avatar does. You'll notice that both of our avatars say tap to play or draw a site. Drawing a site comes from your Atlas deck right here. And then you also have your spell book. We'll explain that in a moment. My avatar also has another ability that says target a nearby location. Nearby is anything in the diagonal and orthogonal spaces around your avatar. So in this case, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces around my avatar. Deal damage to another random unit there equal to the sum of this little symbol here is air threshold on spells you've cast this turn. So I'm able to tap my avatar to deal damage to a random unit at that site based on the number of air threshold spells I've cast that turn.
To simplify what he just said, a unit is any minion or avatar, and air threshold is one of the 4 elemental thresholds that dictate what cards you can play and when. So the 4 elemental thresholds are air, water, fire, and earth. So in the case of Spark Mage, he cares about casting air spells. So for every air spell, that will essentially pump up his power that he can tap, which is determined sideways. And then that is essentially activating his ability to do what the card says, given the given circumstances of what that turn looked like. My avatar is Wave Shaper. It says you can tap it to play or draw a site. Its second ability is I can tap to flood a site near your body of water until you do so again. And then I tap minions without submerge there. They don't untap the next time they would. So let's break down that real quick. To flood a site, a flooded site just means that
site is now water.
That site is now water. So of the 4 elemental thresholds, to flood a site means that any site that isn't water is now water because it has been flooded, but it will still keep them. It will still maintain the other thresholds that it provides. And then tap all minions there without submerge. So submerge is a keyword that some minions can have, which means that they can exist inside the body of water, essentially under the realm, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then they don't untap the next time they would, which means that if they were to be tapped down by Waveshifter's ability, when I pass to Zach, his minions that were tapped down by that ability won't untap that turn.
All right, so next up is sites. So I'll just flip over a site here. We can look at what our sites do here. So every site has a name, a type line, and most sites have elemental icons. And then finally, sites have a text box. So if you look at this site, this is the Lone Tower. It is an ordinary site, which means that it is common. You can play 4 of these in your deck. It has a Genesis ability. Genesis means when it comes into play, this ability procs. If this is the only Lone Tower I control, I gain 1 mana this turn. So when you play a site, it produces mana. When it comes into play, some of them have Genesis abilities, so that happens too. But you'll also notice this elemental sign. This means that I currently have 1 air threshold.
So the Summer River provides water threshold, 1 water threshold, and then it also has a Genesis ability, which is when it comes into play. So when the Summer River comes into play, I get to look at my next spell, and I get to decide if I want to put that on the bottom of my spell book.
Yeah, and I should mention that at the beginning of each turn, you look at all of your sites, and you count those up, and each site that produces mana adds 1 mana to your mana pool, and then you already have your threshold.
Yeah, so regarding your mana can increase every turn. Your threshold only cares. Threshold is once you have it, you have it. So some cards that will use your mana every turn. So if Zach wants to cast a 1 casting cost spell and then a 2 casting cost spell, For that turn, he would need 3 total mana. But if each one of those things requires, let's say, 2 air threshold, if he has got 2 air threshold, that is sufficient for all of those spells. The only thing that depletes is your mana every turn, not your threshold.
There are 4 classic elements: fire, air, water, and earth. Your sites will provide you with an elemental affinity based on the represented icons. Spells and abilities might require that you meet or exceed a certain threshold in order to play or use that ability.
So, for example, if you had a minion, let's say I tapped my Wave Shaper to play the Summer River underneath. I would do the Genesis ability and decide if I want to put the top spell of my spellbook on top or bottom. But then if I had a creature that cost, or a minion that cost 1 mana, but 2 water threshold, I wouldn't be able to cast it because I only had 1 water threshold.
So next we have spells. So there's a couple different spells. I'm going to pull a couple different ones aside here. Let's do a spell, a minion, a relic,
An aura.
An aura. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. I don't see any auras in this particular build, so glad you had one. Okay, perfect. So all spells have a name, a mana cost that you must pay in order to play it, a type line, which is this line here. That's where it tells you if it's ordinary, and it has some keywords generally in the type line too. So like this Highland Clansman is a mortal, which is a specific super type that some cards determine whether or not they work with that super type. And text box, of course, it describes the abilities and the things that card does. So minions also have a minion also has an elemental threshold, which is you can find up at the top there, and it will give you a mana cost that tells you how much mana you need to put this in. So this one has 7, but you only need 1 air threshold in your total affinity to be able to cast this Highland Clansman. Highland Clansman has a 5 power, and it has charge. Charge is basically allowing you to use this creature the turn it comes into play. Normally you have to wait a turn, but you have to, with this one, you don't have to wait a turn. You can use it immediately.
And charge is one of the several keywords that are implicit rules knowledge. So, like, you'll have to learn what those cards do, as there is not reminder text on the cards, and it keeps the cards looking nice and pristine to have without having any reminder text. You can always go to the rulebook to see what any of the rules, such as charge, do.
Yeah, and we'll go over some of those at the end of this episode.
Yeah, for example, as to like what the mana and threshold looks like and actually being able to do something. Let's say I have my Wave Shaper, I tap it to play a site. I'll play my Summer River, trigger the Genesis ability. Now, because it's my turn and I have a site, it produces 1 mana. And I have 1 blue threshold, so I actually could cast this Swamp Buffalo on turn 1 because it requires 1 mana and 1 blue threshold, which I have provided. So I would be able to cast this to the site because you can only cast minions to your own sites throughout the realm, unless a card says otherwise.
Finally, we have auras and magic, and we also have relics, which we'll talk about in a moment. Auras and magics can be distinguished from each other by their type lines. So you'll see ordinary magic, and for the aura, exceptional aura. So it tells you what kind of spell it is.
And so for an ordinary magic, you would be able to have 4 of that card in your deck. For an exceptional aura, you could only have 3 of it because it's exceptional.
Now, unless otherwise stated, most auras can be cast anywhere on the realm, and generally they're cast in a cross-section of 4 spaces. Some of them are specific and they say only 2 spaces. Some of them say cast on 1 specific space, but for the most part, you cast an aura on the cross-section of 4 spaces.
So if an aura baseline always goes to the cross-section of 4 spaces, unless the card itself says otherwise. So if it doesn't say anything, like the Mariner's Curse here, then you know that it goes to any cross-section and it would affect the 4 squares it touches.
All right. Setting up your game.
Let's set up this game. I'm going to move these boxes out of the way.
Yeah. So let's get these cards back into the decks. Now you'll note there are 2 decks. There's a spellbook deck and an atlas deck.
And they are what they sound like. A spellbook has all of your spells in it, which includes all of your artifacts, your auras, your minions, your magics. And then the other deck is an atlas, which contains all of your sites.
All right. So you and your opponent struggle to control the realm, which is a 4x5 grid. These squares start as part of the void, which will gradually be replaced by sites. So this is currently all void. The entire board is all void. When you place a site there, it is now a spot with a site on it.
So once you place a site, it is no longer a void. It's whatever that site is, and you control that site. And your opponent can interact with that site by attacking it and doing other things, like moving to it. And it's also the places that you'll be able to summon your minions to.
So we each place our avatar in the middle of the row closest to us, and your opponent will do the same. Next, take all of your sites and shuffle them face down to form your Atlas deck, and place it face down on the right of the realm. Then create your spell book by shuffling all of your minions, artifacts, auras, and magics together, face down, and place them below your Atlas deck.
Now, this is also given that we are both placing it to the right because we are right dominant. We like drawing with our right hand. Some players who are lefty might like to put it to the other side, which is also okay. It's typically whatever hand you like to draw with.
Leave a little space below your decks for the cemetery, where you will place your discarded cards.
Discard is anything that dies, anything that is something might say discard from your spell book, in which case you would just turn them over into your graveyard. Discarding just goes to the cemetery.
Finally, you'll draw your starting hand by taking 3 cards from each of your decks. If you're not satisfied with what you drew, you may place any number of cards drawn face down under the respective decks and redraw an equal number to replace them. Up to 3 is actually the correct number. The old rule book says any number, but the game has been changed. You can choose 3 total cards from your deck. And I'm going to keep all of mine.
I am actually going to use the mulligan ability. I'm going to mulligan this one site down here, and then I will replace it by drawing another site.
All right, so let's talk about how you win this game. In order to win a game of Sorcery, you must defeat your opponent's avatar and place them at death's door by reducing their life total to 0. Then you have to deliver one final blow directly to the avatar when they're at death's door. Death's door is what happens when your avatar goes to 0. It stops the game. You no longer can take damage for the rest of that turn, and then the next damage you take has to be dealt directly to you, and that will kill you.
Yeah, clarifying, it doesn't stop what's happening. Other game actions can still happen on the table, but once you go to death's door, your avatar is immune. You cannot lose the game that turn, but then any damage thereafter on following turns to specifically your avatar and not to sites does actually end the game, and whoever did that wins is conquered the realm.
Let's talk about the golden and silver rules.
Let's do it.
The golden rule is if the text of a card contradicts the rule book, then the card text takes precedence. We all know how that works. And then finally, the silver rule is some text is intentionally colloquial, or necessarily compact. Use common sense and be cool. All right, so let me define a couple more concepts for the game. Units. Units are any minion or avatar that you want to target.
And that's going to be different for some cards that specify units, which includes avatars, and other cards that might specify minions, which means not your avatar.
Or cards that specify avatar.
Or cards that specify avatar.
Steps. A step is the minimum unit of distance between 2 adjacent locations.
And so adjacent locations are anything on the adjacent lines, which are
orthogonal.
Orthogonal lines, which is forward, back, or to either side. It is not a diagonal. There are some rules that allow you to go diagonal for some minions, or allow your avatar to go diagonal, but at a baseline, if it says you can take a step, you can go in the orthogonal direction, which is the cross.
All right. So then tapping and activating abilities. Of course, tapping means to turn a card sideways to show that it has been used. Only untapped cards and tokens can be tapped, so you can't retap a creature or a minion, you can't retap a minion or an avatar. All of your cards in play automatically untap during the ready step at the beginning of the turn. And finally, summoning sickness. When a unit comes under your control, it cannot tap during that same turn.
And that means that it also cannot move or attack. Anything that would involve tapping it, it cannot do that unless otherwise stated.
Now, let's bring up basic abilities really fast. Move is a basic ability. That is an action that allows your unit to move 1 space up, down, left, or right. And when doing so, you have to tap to show that that has been done. Then you have intercepting movement, and that comes into play when a unit goes onto the same site that you're on. You can then stop it by blocking it, basically, intercepting it. We'll get more into that as we go through the game. Finally, next is attack. You may tap a unit in order to move it if needed, and to attack a target that is within range of motion. Normally, the range of motion is 1, some cards have more than one range of motion, and we'll speak about that when that happens. If the unit needs to move to do so, it may be intercepted. The target of an attack can be either another unit or a site. If attacking unit reaches its target, it will engage in combat.
And we should clarify that when it engages in combat, it can only attack enemy positions. So it can attack enemy sites or enemy units. You cannot attack your own sites. You can't attack your own minions or your own avatar.
So let's get this game going, and we'll start it out. So let's determine who goes first. We'll just go with high roll here. I have an 8. And you have an 8. And I have an 8.
Roll an 8.
You have an 8. 6. All right. Phil, you get to go first.
So I get to go first, which means that because Zach is on the draw, which means he goes second, he gets to scry one, which is he gets to look at the top of either his spellbook or his atlas and decide if he wants to put that card leave it on the top or put it to the bottom.
That right where it is.
And then as I get to go first, I don't draw any card for turn because I got the presumed advantage of being able to develop a site before my opponent. Zach will be able to draw a card on his first turn because he's on the draw, which is why it's called on the draw. So I will start by tapping my wave shifter to play this Autumn River. Now, anytime your avatar is in the void, the first thing that you have to do is tap it to put a site underneath it. That way it can exist within the realm. So that's just a given circumstance that all avatars must abide by. So your first turn, you always know that you're going to put a site underneath your avatar because currently it is in the void. So I tap my avatar, I put this Autumn River underneath it, so it is now in the realm. And my Autumn River has a Genesis ability, which is when it comes into play. So it will trigger, and it says, look at your next spell. You may put it on the bottom of your spellbook. So I will take a look at this next card. This is something that I think I would be interested in having sometime in the near future, so I'll leave it on top. And now I have 1 mana and 1 water threshold, but I don't have anything to do with that 1 mana, so I'm just going to pass the turn to Zach.
Okay. I will draw from my spellbook. I'm going to play a Cloud City with my avatar. If I have 3 air threshold, once on my turn, I may fly this site to a nearby void. So I can actually move this site. And you'll note that this is a unique site, so it's pretty special. And it allows you to do something that normally you couldn't do with a normal site.
And it also means that I know he only can have 1 unique site, like Cloud City, in his deck, if it says unique. So he might have many unique sites in his deck, but he can only have 1 Cloud City. So I know that that's the 1 Cloud City that's going to happen on his side of the board.
Yep.
And so when it says fly is part of the airborne mechanic, as it refers to, that you might see. And one thing for movement is flying does allow a site, in this case Cloud City, or a minion to go diagonally like that. So if it was moving, he would only be able to go orthogonal, but because it says fly, he actually can go into a diagonal square.
And that's made also apparent by fly to a nearby site.
Yes.
All right. Your turn.
All right, so I will untap. I will draw from my spellbook. I'm going to tap my Wave Shaper to play another site, and it will be this Floodplain, which I'm going to play in front. So this is an exceptional site. It means that I can have 3 of them in my atlas. It says, once on your turn, you may flood an adjacent site this turn, which means that it will become a water site, expanding my body of water. A body of water is any space within the realm where water sites are connected, which is very flavorful, very cool. And so once on my turn, if it's there's an adjacent site and I want to flood it, I can do so. So now I have 2 mana, but I will not use it. I will pass the turn.
I'm going to spell. I'm going to play a Gothic Tower.
Zach, I'm going to stop you. What do you have to do in order to play your Gothic Tower? He's got to tap his avatar.
Yes. In playing that Gothic Tower, you'll note that it's my only Gothic Tower, and it says if this is your only Gothic Tower, you gain +1 this turn.
+1 mana.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play Headless Haunt. Now, Headless Haunt has Void Walk. Void Walk means that this creature can exist in the void. This minion is allowed to exist in the void, which means that I can play this anywhere where there is void, which is a lot of places right now. So I'm going to play it right here. And it says, at the start of my turn, Headless Haunt teleports atop a random site or void, which means I have to roll a 20-sided die at the start of my turn.
As there are 20 squares.
And it will go to one of those sites.
But when it does so, it is not leaving the realm. It's just teleporting into the realm, so it won't have summoning sickness wherever it ends up.
Yep. All right, and that will end my turn.
And so to clarify on that turn, this is a 3-cost minion. You may be saying, wait a minute, he only has 2 mana from 2 sites. The Gothic Tower gave him an additional mana, so he actually had 3 mana that turn because of its special ability, and so he was able to play this 3 mana minion.
And it has 2 air threshold. I have air and air.
Draw a... I think I'm going to draw a site this turn. So I will play a Spring River, which, much like the Autumn River, has a Genesis ability that says I can look at my next spell and put it on top or bottom. So I'm going to look, and I'm going to keep that card on top. I like that one very much. And then I'm going to use my Deep Sea Mermaids. So I have currently 3 water threshold, and because I have 3 sites, they're all producing a mana, and so I have 3 mana. So I am going to play this Deep Sea Mermaids, and I'm going to submerge it underneath my floodplain. Now, submerged is one of 2 keyword abilities that allow minions to exist underneath the realm. Those are submerge and burrowing, and they differ only by means by which sites they can be placed on. So submerge, of course, is it can go into any body of water, which is any water site. Burrowing is similar, but can only work on land sites, which is any non-water site, which are the other 3 elemental thresholds. If any site has water threshold, it is a water site. So Deep Sea Mermaids has a Genesis ability that says draw my bottommost spell. So I know what my top spell is. What I'm going to draw here on the bottom is random. But since I know I'm going to draw that card next turn, I decided to take a random draw here.
But you did see it when you mulliganed, right?
I didn't. I put a
Sight.
sight.
Okay.
Yeah, but 3 mana for a 1 power minion that draws a spell, pretty powerful. And that is all my mana, so I will pass the turn.
Okay. Well, at the beginning of my turn, I untap, and then the Headless Haunt goes to a random site. It's going to site number 2.
So that is what I wanted to see. I want that minion, which has 4 power, which is very powerful, away from my minion and from my avatar. So now, even though it can move, it is back on the other side of the board. That was a lucky roll for me.
Yep. I'm going to draw a Atlas, and I will play, unfortunately, another Gothic Tower, which is not super ideal because I already have a Gothic Tower in play, so I don't gain the extra mana off of it. Kind of is what it is. But now that I have 3 air threshold, I can move my Cloud City up.
And this is a fun fact with Cloud City. The Cloud City carries everything that is on it, and so that's free movement for his avatar, which is pretty powerful, which is why Cloud City is such a unique effect.
And I will play a Plumed Pegasus. It is a 3 power minion that has Airborne. So Airborne allows you to move orthogonally or diagonally when you move. Also, it means that things that are on the ground cannot directly attack this minion.
It makes sense, right? If you're on the ground, you can't attack something that's in the sky above you. Now, to clarify, even though there is a realm there is the terrain underneath the realm, which is if anything is submerged or burrowed. Even though airborne is in the sky, it is still considered the surface. So there's only 2 spaces in the realm. There's below, which is submerged or burrowed, and then there's the surface, which is anything on the ground or in the sky.
Common mistake, Phil. Void is also its own region in the realm. All right, it's your turn.
All right. I will untap my Wave Shaper. I'm going to draw a spell for turn, which I know from last turn what it is.
So right now we have 3 different regions represented in the realm. We have Submerge, we have Surface, and we have Void.
Okay, so I am going to, before actually sequencing is going to be important for this turn, I'm going to spend my mana casting a Sunken Treasure. Sunken Treasure is an exceptional relic, which means that I can play up to 3 of them in my deck. It says, if cast, conjure this under an allied water site, of an opponent's choice. When Sunken Treasure is carried to the surface, its controller sacrifices it and draws 2 cards. So as a relic, it means that any unit can pick it up. If they find it, they can pick it up or they can drop it. It is a relic. It is to be used. So this Sunken Treasure is going to go into a water site of Zach's choice. Right now, there are 3 water sites for him to choose from. So he's going to put it where I have to move to go pick it up. So it is cast submerged right there. So what I will do is I'm going to, of course, move my Deep Sea Mermaids, submerged as it's still underwater, over to the Spring River. So it is moved, so it is tapped to represent that it took that action. And now that it's here, I'm going to pick up the Sunken Treasure. Now, the Sunken Treasure needs to be brought to the surface before it will trigger and draw me cards. So that is set up for next turn. Hopefully, Zach can't do anything to stop that. Before I pass the turn to him, I'm going to tap my Wave Shaper. That way I can play another site. I'm going to expand my body of water by playing Undertow, which is an exceptional site, which means that I can play 3 of them. It has a Genesis ability that says, staying within this body of water, move target unit 1 step. So This was actually a position where I don't necessarily need anything to be moved, but what I could have done was I could have floodplained his site over here, and then undertowed Genesis staying within the body of water, extended my body of water, and then moved one of his minions due to the undertow's effects. But I don't want his minions to come any closer to me, and I don't want to give his airborne minion, which would have access to more range, to go any further. And I'm happy where his headless haunt currently is. Even though it's in the void, I wouldn't even be able to target it anyway. But I'm using this to expand my body of water. I will pass the turn.
Hey, gang, I know things are looking pretty intense right now in the game, but you know what else would be intense?
Joining our Patreon. Just head over to patreon.com/eternaldurdles and sign up for the Magician tier so you can get all of our sorcery content.
Back to the game.
Okay.
I'll untap, and of course, at the beginning of my turn, Headless Haunt gets to go somewhere new. Goes to 13, right to there. I'm going to draw from my spellbook. Then I'm going to have the Spark Mage fly to here to cut you off, and I'll play a Planar Gate right here.
What does Planar Gate do that?
Planar Gate says it's an elite site, and it says minions can traverse the void, gaining Void Walk until leaving it. Minions here can traverse the void, gaining Void Walk until leaving it. That's any minion, yours or mine. All right, so with that said, let's start doing some damage. Coming in for 4, I'm going to attack his site for 4. What that does is your avatar is represented by your sites on the realm. So if I'm dealing damage to a site, they're connected to your avatar takes damage. So that's 4 damage.
That's 4 damage, so I take 4. So I'm now at 16.
And then I'm going to go ahead and move the Plume Pegasus and attack as well on that same site, and that is going to be another 3, putting you to 13. Then I'm going to play Midnight Rogue. Midnight Rogue has stealth, which means that it cannot be targeted or attacked, and when it does attack, it cannot be blocked. But when it does that, anytime a minion with stealth affects the realm, as in casts a spell or attacks, they lose stealth. So right now this has stealth. It also has ranged. Let me just read out what range does, because it's a little tricky if you've never seen range before in the game. This unit has tap and shoot a projectile that stops after 1 step, strike the unit impacted, and this unit also may intercept airborne minions flying over them. So this basically just allows me to reach 1 spot farther to do its damage.
Which is not attacking. So ranged is a very powerful mechanic.
Strike.
In that it's shooting a projectile. So it will strike. It will not receive damage back, but it will hit with that damage with that projectile. And by 1 step, can go in any direction, similar to how flying can go in any direction.
Well, this is a projectile, so it's going up, down, left, right.
There you go. Please, you want to explain the difference of projectile?
Yeah, so a ranged minion. Now, if it had range 2, I suppose it might be able to do that, but I'm not sure. I know for a fact that projectile is up, down, left, right from this guy. So it's going to go either here or here or here, and it's only for 1 spot because it's just ranged. It's not range 2. So it just goes here or here or here or here.
Yeah, so to think of when anything is shooting a projectile, think that is the caster shooting it, and so it's shooting in the direction that it allows you to do so from that position. All right, so it's my turn after that?
It is your turn.
All right, I will untap my Wave Shifter and my Deep Sea Mermaids. I'm going to draw a site. I'm going to tap my avatar to expand my body of water here. I'm going to Spring River, which is similar to Autumn River, and I have another Spring River here. Genesis, I get to look at my topmost spell and decide if I want to keep it. Okay. I think I'll leave that there. So I have access to 5 mana. I'm going to, I think, spend this move by using my Deep Sea Mermaid, which is holding the Sunken Treasure. I'm going to carry the Sunken Treasure to the surface. So now all of the things on the surface can target my Deep Sea Mermaids, but by them finding the Sunken Treasure, it has, when it's carried to the surface, which is what had just happened, its controller sacrifices it and draws 2 cards. Now that means that I can draw from my spellbook or my atlas. So I am going to.
You have to choose before you draw. You must determine which ones you want to do.
Yeah, so I'm going to draw from my atlas here, and then I think I will draw. I'll actually draw both from my atlas, and then with my 5 mana, I'm going to play a Pirate Ship. This is a 4-mana minion with 5 toughness, with 1 water threshold. 5 power with 1 water threshold. I have plenty of water. It is an ordinary ship, so I can have 4 of them, of mortal scum, and it is water bound, which means that it has to exist in a body of water. It cannot exist outside of that because a ship can't be on land. So with that, I will pass the turn.
All right. I'm going to untap at my start phase here. Roll to see where the Headless Haunt goes. 3 goes here. Bum, 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 bum. Okay. Then, all right. I'm going to play an Observatory, which is an elite site of